It was an ordinary day in the small town of Riverside. But for Mariana Alice, everything was about to change in an instant. Her eyes flickered nervously as she stood up in front of the class, holding a folder full of pictures that meant everything to her. "I'm proud to introduce you to my mom," she said, trying to steady her trembling hands. "She's Dr. Jade Alice, an astrobiologist and the lead engineer for NASA's Artemis mission. She's helping design the technology that will carry humans to the moon and eventually to Mars." There was a brief pause before a voice interrupted from the back of the room. "Really? That sounds a bit far-fetched, don't you think?" It was Mrs. Diana Porter, the science teacher, known for her strictness, but also her sharp, skeptical nature. The rest of the class snickered, but the words that followed cut through Mariana like a blade. "Let's be realistic, Mariana," Mrs. Porter continued, her tone dripping with condescension. "Women like your mother, especially women of color, don't get missions like the ones NASA undertakes. This is a very ambitious story. You don't expect us to believe that, do you?" The laughter that followed felt like a cold wind sweeping through Mariana's soul. She felt her cheeks burning with shame, and for a moment, her knees wobbled, but she refused to let the tears fall. She had to hold it together. "That's not true," she whispered, looking down at her shoes. "My mom works at NASA." Mrs. Porter's eyes narrowed in mockery. "Sweetie, this is an exercise about real professions, not fantasy stories." The laughter was louder now. It was as if the room had turned against her. Before Mariana could respond, Mrs. Porter waved her off, dismissing her with a casual, "Let's move on, shall we? There's no time for make-believe." Mariana's heart sank. She tried to ignore the stares that followed her as she returned to her seat, clutching the folder to her chest. But something inside her was stirring, something that neither her teacher nor her classmates could see yet. Mariana's hands still trembled as she sat there, staring at the desk, her mind racing. She could still hear the mocking laughter echoing in her ears, each chuckle sinking deeper into her heart. Why couldn't they believe her? But the universe had its own plans for the day. As Mariana tried to steady her breath, the door to the classroom creaked open. All at once, the noise in the room quieted. In walked a woman who commanded attention from the very first step tall, poised and wearing a blue NASA jacket, her hair styled into neat braids. Behind her was the principal, Mr. Edriel Wilson, a man who rarely appeared uninvited. "Sorry for the disruption," Mr. Wilson said, his voice breaking the heavy silence. "We've got a special guest today. I'd like you to meet Dr. Jade Alice, astrobiologist and lead project manager for the Artemis mission at NASA." The room fell completely still. The moment seemed to stretch, the air thick with disbelief. Mrs. Porter's face turned ashen, and her mouth hung slightly open. She glanced back and forth between Mariana, sitting at her desk, and the woman who had just walked in. Mariana's heart leaped in her chest. She recognized her mother immediately, standing tall, radiant, and professional. But the shock that radiated from her classmates was evident as they tried to reconcile the image of this confident woman with the idea they had just been told about her. Dr. Jade Alice smiled warmly as she stepped into the classroom. "Hello, everyone," she said, her voice calm and authoritative. "It's such a pleasure to be here with you today." Mariana, still wide-eyed, could hardly believe this moment was real. She felt the heat of the class's eyes on her, but now there was something different. A sense of power was building inside her. Her mom was here, and nothing would take away the truth now. Dr. Alice turned to face the students, and her gaze met Mariana's. A silent exchange passed between them, a shared understanding, as if her mother was reassuring her. "I'm here, and so is the truth." "Let's get started," Dr. Alice continued. "Who's ready to learn about the future of space exploration?" The room was eerily quiet, the students frozen in place. Mrs. Porter, standing at the front, had no words. Her face had gone pale, and her eyes were wide as she looked back and forth between the confident woman in front of the class and the student she had just ridiculed. "Dr. Alice," on the other hand, remained calm, her expression composed as she looked out at the students. "I'm excited to share with you all about the Artemis mission," Dr. Alice began, her voice steady and filled with passion. "As many of you may know, this mission is NASA's effort to return humans to the moon and ultimately to Mars. But what you might not know is that women, people of color, and individuals from all walks of life have been instrumental in making this dream a reality." Mariana watched in awe as her mother spoke. She had heard these words before, of course, but to hear her speak them so confidently in front of everyone, it felt like a triumph. A victory not just for Dr. Alice but for her daughter, who had faced so much doubt and mockery. The students, still in shock, watched intently as Dr. Alice pulled up a slide showing her standing with the team at NASA. There she was, right in front of them, a woman of color, leading one of the most important projects in space exploration history. "Here I am with my team, in front of the Artemis propulsion system model," Dr. Alice said, pointing to the image. "It's a technology that could very well change the way we explore space. And it was developed by a diverse team that includes scientists from every corner of the world." The class was silent, mesmerized. Mrs. Porter remained standing off to the side, unable to speak, her posture rigid as she tried to process the reality in front of her. Dr. Alice turned back to the students. "Science is about facts. It's about solving problems. And it doesn't matter who you are or where you come from. If you're passionate about learning and pushing boundaries, there's no limit to what you can accomplish." Mariana's chest swelled with pride as she listened. Her mother wasn't just a scientist. She was a trailblazer, a role model. And now she was showing everyone in this room what real courage and determination looked like. Dr. Alice looked down at Mariana, and for a brief moment, their eyes locked. "This is your moment," her gaze seemed to say. "We're doing this together. Does anyone have any questions?" Dr. Alice asked, breaking the silence. For a long moment, no one said anything. The students were still stunned, trying to process the reality of what was happening. They had come to class expecting a normal lesson, not a surprise lecture from one of NASA's most distinguished scientists. Some shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Others looked down at their desks, unable to meet the gaze of Dr. Alice or their classmates. Then, finally, a voice broke the silence. One of the students, a quiet redhead who had been mostly reserved throughout the day, hesitantly raised his hand. I have a question," he said, his voice shaky. "The teacher, Mrs. Porter, she said that your mom's job wasn't real, that no woman of color has ever had a job like that at NASA. Is that true?" The room collectively held its breath, waiting for Dr. Alice's response. Mrs. Porter's face flushed with embarrassment, but she didn't interrupt. She could only stand and listen. Dr. Alice paused for a moment, her expression calm but filled with a quiet intensity. She glanced over at Mariana, whose face had gone red with emotion. "I understand why you might be confused," Dr. Alice said, her voice soft yet firm. "People sometimes doubt what they can't see or understand. But let me tell you something. No one should ever be limited by someone else's assumptions or beliefs. Just because something has never been done before doesn't mean it can't be done. And just because someone doubts you doesn't mean you shouldn't strive for what you know is true." Her words hung in the air, like a challenge that echoed through the room. Mariana felt a surge of strength inside her, something she had never quite felt before. It was as if her mother's presence, her words, and the powerful truth of what she represented were awakening something deep within her. Dr. Alice continued, her gaze never leaving the students. "At NASA, we don't judge people by the color of their skin, their gender, or any of the other things that make them different. We judge them by their ability to think critically, to solve complex problems, and to make the impossible possible. And that's what I'm here to tell you. Don't let anyone tell you that your dreams are too big or too impossible. If you believe in them, that's all that matters." The room fell silent once again. The tension that had been there earlier, the judgment and the doubt, seemed to dissipate as Dr. Alice's words settled into the hearts of every student in the room. Mariana sat there stunned. She had never heard her mother speak with such power, such conviction. But it wasn't just her mother's words. It was the fact that she was standing in front of these students, showing them what was possible, showing them that no one, not even someone who was doubted and ridiculed, was ever truly limited by what others believed. As Dr. Alice finished speaking, the silence that followed was almost palpable. The atmosphere in the room had shifted dramatically. The usual chatter that filled the classroom had evaporated, replaced by a deep sense of reflection. Even the teacher, Mrs. Porter, stood there, her hands clasped in front of her, looking as though she had just been hit by a revelation. But then, with a soft chuckle, Dr. Alice turned to the students once again. She said with a smile, "When I first started at NASA, people told me that women like me, women of color, would never make it into the higher ranks of science. I was told that my dreams were too big, too out of reach. But here I am today." She paused, letting that sink in, her eyes scanning the room of young minds who were still processing the words she had shared. "You might think that being told you can't do something will make you feel small," she continued. "But in my experience, it only makes you stronger. Because when others doubt you, it becomes your mission to prove them wrong." Mariana sat frozen in her seat, her heart pounding. Her mother wasn't just a scientist. She was a symbol of defying the odds, of breaking through barriers. She wasn't just talking about space missions and rocket science. She was speaking about life itself, about the courage it takes to challenge the world's narrowest perceptions. And in that moment, as Dr. Alice's words reverberated in her mind, Mariana made a decision. She would not let the doubts of others define her, nor her mother's path. She would take that strength, that knowledge, and carry it forward. But just as the room began to settle into a new kind of quiet, a shift occurred, a more subtle, but powerful change. Dr. Alice took out her tablet and projected an image onto the classroom wall. "This is the Artemis mission's propulsion system," she said, pointing to the sleek model. "It's an advanced propulsion technology that is going to help us travel farther into space than we've ever gone before. And it was designed by a team of engineers and scientists who represent the diversity of our world." Mariana felt a surge of pride rush through her as she looked at the image. For the first time, she understood that her mother's work wasn't just about space. It was about creating a future where everyone, no matter their background, could reach the stars. As Dr. Alice went on, explaining the intricacies of the propulsion system, Mariana's thoughts drifted. She thought of the kids back at school, the ones who had laughed at her, the ones who doubted her. She thought about Mrs. Porter's skepticism, and then it hit her. This was more than just proving her mother's work. It was about proving that anyone could break through the barriers society set for them. The moment her mom had walked into that room was the moment everything changed for her classmates, and most importantly, for herself. Dr. Alice finished her presentation with a final statement. "The sky is not the limit. The limit is the one we set for ourselves." For the first time in her life, Mariana realized that the sky wasn't even close to being her limit. The world and the stars beyond it were wide open. The next few moments felt like a blur as Dr. Alice continued her lecture, explaining the fascinating details of propulsion technology and the challenges of deep space exploration. But Mariana's mind wasn't entirely focused on the science. She was too busy processing the shift that had taken place within her. The doubts, the taunts, the whispered insults, they were all beginning to melt away, replaced by something far more powerful. Her mother's words had given her the strength to face the truth, to embrace it fully. And now, for the first time, she saw the full picture of what it meant to be part of something so much bigger than herself. After Dr. Alice's lecture, it was time for the students to return to their assigned seats, and Mariana felt a deep, almost palpable change in the air. Her classmates no longer looked at her with the same skepticism. They were looking at her now as someone who had not only proven her point, but had also shown them the power of knowledge, resilience, and courage. But what happened next truly solidified that moment. The principal, Mr. Wilson, stepped forward with a warm smile. "Thank you, Dr. Alice, for sharing your expertise and inspiring all of us. I think it's safe to say we've all learned an important lesson today, not just about science, but about life itself." Dr. Alice smiled back, then turned to the students with a final word of wisdom. "I hope you all carry with you the idea that no dream is too big. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." But just as the class began to return to their regular routine, the door opened again. Mr. Wilson peeked in with an apologetic smile. "Sorry to interrupt, but there's someone who would like to speak with you, Dr. Alice." Before anyone could question what was happening, a young girl about Mariana's age walked into the room, her face flushed with excitement. "Mariana?" the girl asked, her voice nervous but eager. Mariana turned toward her, slightly confused. The girl smiled shyly. "My name's Zoe. I've been listening to you talk about space. I never thought about it that way before. My dad's a scientist too. I've always been told girls like me shouldn't go into space stuff." The words struck a chord with Mariana. She felt the same way, once isolated, doubted, but her mother's words had changed everything. "I think you can go into space, Zoe," Mariana said with a confident smile. "There's no shouldn't when it comes to dreams." Dr. Alice, overhearing, turned and nodded. "Exactly, Mariana. Everyone has the right to dream big, no matter where they come from or what others say." Mariana and Zoe exchanged smiles, a silent agreement forming between them. The stars, it seemed, were wide open for everyone. And this was just the beginning. In the days that followed, the school buzzed with excitement. Word had spread quickly about the surprise guest lecture and the powerful message Dr. Alice had delivered. Mariana was still floating on a cloud of pride, but she couldn't ignore the whispers that followed her through the hallways. Some were supportive, others still skeptical. But something was different now. She wasn't the same girl who had walked into the classroom a few days ago, trembling with uncertainty. Mariana felt a sense of strength she hadn't known she had, and it wasn't just because of her mother's visit. It was because she was beginning to realize that she was capable of much more than anyone, even herself, had imagined. Then, a few days later, an unexpected email arrived from Principal Wilson. He invited Dr. Alice to serve as a judge at an impromptu science fair the school was organizing. The event was a way to channel the newfound interest in science into something positive and educational, and the timing felt almost too perfect. Mariana couldn't believe it. She had spent countless hours in her small kitchen, surrounded by diagrams, formulas, and her mother's research materials. Now, with the fair just around the corner, her project on ion propulsion was finally ready for display. It wasn't just an ordinary project. It was a reflection of everything she had learned, everything her mother had taught her, and everything she had fought to believe in. "Do you think I have a chance?" Mariana asked her mother one night over dinner. Jade smiled, her eyes filled with pride. "I think you've already proven you can do anything you set your mind to. But remember, it's not about the prize. It's about showing everyone what you're capable of, regardless of the obstacles you face." The morning of the fair, the gymnasium was filled with students setting up their projects. Volcanoes erupted in plastic cups, models of the solar system hung from the rafters, and colorful posters about ecosystems covered the walls. But in the far corner, almost hidden from view, was Mariana's project. It was simple, sleek, functional, with a small ion propulsion system running smoothly in the center of the display. As she stood before her project, making last-minute adjustments, her heart raced. The nerves were back, but this time, they were different. They were fueled by excitement and pride, not fear. Suddenly, a familiar voice broke her thoughts. "Looks impressive," Zoe said, walking up to her with a grin. "I'm guessing this is the one that'll blow everyone away." Mariana smiled. "I hope so." As they talked, Deanna Porter walked through the room, clipboard in hand, making her rounds to inspect the projects. Mariana's stomach churned as the teacher passed by. It wasn't lost on her that Mrs. Porter hadn't apologized for her earlier actions, not directly at least. But there was something in the air now. The doubt that had once loomed over her had been replaced by something more powerful: respect. When Mrs. Porter stopped in front of Mariana's project, she gave it a long, appraising look. Her gaze lingered on the ion propulsion system, the sleek design, the simplicity of it. She said nothing at first. "In propulsion?" she finally asked, her voice somewhat softer than before. "This is the technology NASA is using for the Artemis mission, right?" Mariana nodded confidently. "Yes, it is. It's much more efficient for long-distance missions than traditional chemical propulsion. It uses electric fields to accelerate ions to extremely high speeds, which allows spacecraft to travel farther without relying on massive amounts of fuel." Mrs. Porter's eyebrows raised slightly. She didn't say anything else, but Mariana could tell she was impressed. For a moment, there was a flicker of something, maybe admiration, maybe even apology in her expression. But just as quickly, it disappeared. "I see," Mrs. Porter said, her voice returning to its usual professional tone. "Well, it seems you've done your homework, Mariana. Good luck." Mariana stood tall as Mrs. Porter walked away. She wasn't sure if that was an apology, but it didn't matter. What mattered was that she had earned her respect. And that was all she needed. The science fair had reached its peak. The gymnasium, once filled with the nervous excitement of last-minute adjustments, was now alive with the sounds of questions and discussions. Students and parents milled about, admiring the diverse range of projects on display. From solar-powered cars to homemade weather stations, it was clear that the event was a huge success. Mariana stood at her station, trying to calm the fluttering in her stomach. She had worked so hard on this project, and now it was time to see if her efforts would pay off. Zoe had already come by to wish her good luck, and her mom had given her a final encouraging smile before heading to the judges' table. The only thing left was to wait for the announcement. Time seemed to stretch endlessly. And then finally, Principal Wilson took the stage. "Thank you all for your hard work and dedication," Mr. Wilson said, his voice carrying over the crowd. "We've seen some incredible projects today, and it's been a true pleasure to witness your passion for science. Now I'd like to announce the winners of this year's Riverside Science Fair." Mariana's heart raced as she tried to steady her breathing. "Third place," Mr. Wilson continued, "goes to Lin Chen for her project on solar energy storage." The crowd applauded as Lin walked up to accept her certificate. "Second place," he announced next, "is awarded to Zoe Washington for her research on exoplanets and the possibility of life on other worlds." Zoe beamed with pride as she made her way to the stage. Mariana held her breath as Mr. Wilson paused for a moment. The anticipation in the room was thick, and her nerves were on edge. "And now, Mr. Wilson said with a dramatic pause, the first-place winner is Mariana Alice for her functional model of ion propulsion for deep space missions." The gymnasium erupted in applause. Mariana stood frozen for a moment, her heart pounding in her chest. The world around her seemed to blur, and it took a moment before she could move. When she did, it was with a sense of disbelief and exhilaration. She made her way to the stage, each step feeling like a dream. As she reached the podium, Mr. Wilson handed her the certificate, his smile genuine and full of pride. "Congratulations, Mariana. Your work truly stood out today." Mariana took the microphone in her hand, her legs trembling. She looked out at the crowd, her eyes searching for her mother, who was standing near the back of the room, beaming with pride. "Thank you," Mariana began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "This project wasn't just about rockets or space. It was about believing in yourself, even when no one else does. It's about showing the world that no dream is too big." She paused, her gaze meeting Mrs. Porter's in the crowd. The teacher nodded slightly, her expression softer now, no longer holding the same skepticism that had once been there. Mariana smiled, turning back to face the audience. "And I'm proof that we all have the power to make the impossible possible, no matter where we come from or who doubts us. The applause grew louder, and for the first time in her life, Mariana felt a sense of accomplishment that went beyond a ribbon or a certificate. She had shown herself and the world what she was capable of. As she walked off the stage, Zoe and some of her other classmates surrounded her, congratulating her on the win. But in the back of her mind, one thing stood out. This was just the beginning. Her journey had only just begun, and the stars were waiting. In the weeks that followed, the impact of Mariana's victory at the science fair reverberated throughout Riverside High. News of her groundbreaking ion propulsion project spread, and students who had once looked at her with doubt and skepticism now saw her in a new light. Her classmates were eager to learn from her, asking questions about space, science, and the future of exploration. The quiet girl who had been laughed at was now an inspiration. Even Mrs. Porter, who had once mocked Mariana's dreams, was different. She'd sought out opportunities to engage with Mariana, asking for help on scientific concepts and showing a rare respect for her knowledge. There was no denying it. The dynamics had shifted. But for Mariana, the greatest change was within herself. She felt a quiet but profound transformation, not just in how others saw her, but in how she saw herself. One evening, after dinner, Dr. Alice sat down with Mariana, who had just finished a long day of school. She could tell something was different about her daughter, the way she carried herself, the way she held her head high. "How are you feeling?" Dr. Alice asked, her voice warm, concerned. Mariana smiled and shrugged, a touch of pride in her eyes. "I don't know, Mom. I guess I feel like I've finally proven something. Not to anyone else, but to myself." Dr. Alice leaned forward, her gaze steady and knowing. "You've always had it in you, Mariana. You just had to believe it. Sometimes the hardest part is trusting in your own strength." Mariana nodded. The words resonated deep within her. She had spent so much of her life questioning whether she belonged, wondering if she could live up to the expectations others had set for her. But now, she realized, the only expectations that mattered were her own. "Mom," she said after a moment of silence, "what if I could do more? What if I could go beyond just this small town, beyond school projects and competitions?" Dr. Alice's eyes softened. "You can go as far as you want, sweetheart. The universe is full of possibilities, and you don't have to follow the path others expect. You create your own path." Mariana's heart swelled with determination. She had always known that her mother was a trailblazer, but now she was beginning to understand that she, too, could carve her own trail. The sky was no longer the limit, it was just the beginning. That night, as Mariana lay in bed, she looked out the window at the stars above. She felt a sense of peace, but also an intense drive to keep moving forward. She had learned so much, not only about science, but about herself. Her mother had taught her that no one could define her worth, and now she understood it completely. The next day, she walked into school with renewed confidence. As she entered her classroom, she noticed that things were different. Her classmates greeted her with smiles, and for the first time, she felt like she truly belonged. The whispers that had once stung no longer hurt. The doubt and skepticism had turned into admiration and respect. As the days went by, the interest in science at Riverside High grew. More students signed up for the astronomy club. More projects were focused on space exploration. And more teachers began to appreciate the value of teaching with an open mind. Mariana had sparked a shift in the way everyone viewed the world of science, and the possibilities seemed endless. And then, one afternoon, as Mariana was cleaning up after an astronomy club meeting, she noticed Mrs. Porter standing by the door, watching her. The teacher stepped forward and, for the first time, genuinely smiled. "You've inspired more people than you'll ever know," Mrs. Porter said, her voice tinged with a sincerity Mariana had never heard before. "You taught us all a lesson about perseverance, about breaking boundaries, and about believing in the impossible. I can't say I fully understood before, but now I see. You've earned your place among the stars." Mariana looked at her teacher, then smiled back. "Thank you, Mrs. Porter. It means a lot." As she walked out of the classroom that day, she felt like she had truly come into her own. It wasn't just about the awards, the recognition, or the science fair. It was about something deeper. She had found her own voice, her own path, and she was ready to walk it, no matter where it took her. Months passed, and the atmosphere at Riverside High continued to evolve. The impact of Mariana's work, her mother's visit, and the resulting shift in how science was perceived in the school were evident. The once overlooked girl with big dreams was now the one inspiring others to aim higher, think bigger, and challenge the boundaries that society had set for them. Mariana's newfound confidence wasn't just seen in her schoolwork, it was everywhere. She became a natural leader in the astronomy club, guiding discussions, organizing events, and helping younger students with their own projects. She no longer felt like the outsider, the girl who didn't belong. She was the one everyone turned to for advice and inspiration. But it wasn't just her classmates who noticed the change. Dr. Alice had seen it too. One evening, as they sat together after dinner, her mother spoke to her with pride in her voice. "I've been hearing a lot about you around here," Dr. Alice said, a smile tugging at her lips. "It seems like you've made quite an impact." And Mariana laughed, a soft, humble chuckle. "It's funny how everything changed after the science fair. I thought it was just about a project, but it turned into so much more." "It always is, sweetheart," Dr. Alice replied. "When you challenge people's assumptions, when you show them what's possible, it opens doors, not just for you, but for everyone. And that's what you've done." Mariana leaned back in her chair, her mind racing with possibilities. What if I could go further? What if I could take this beyond school, beyond Riverside? Her mother's eyes shone with encouragement. "Then go. You take it as far as you want. The world is full of opportunities for those who are willing to work for them. But remember, the path you choose will always be your own. Make it your own." Mariana looked out the window, her gaze drifting toward the stars. For the first time, she didn't just see the vastness of space. She saw her future stretching out before her, full of potential, full of promise. She wasn't just the girl with the dream anymore. She was the dream, living it every day, proving to herself and to the world that anything was possible if you dared to reach for it. The following year, Mariana's name was on the list for a prestigious summer program at the local observatory, and she was selected as one of the youngest participants in a NASA internship initiative. Her journey into the field of astrophysics was just beginning, and the possibilities were endless. As she continued to work on her research projects, she remembered the lesson her mother had taught her all those years ago, the lesson that had fueled everything she had achieved. It wasn't about proving the doubters wrong. It was about proving herself right. One afternoon, after another long day of studying, Mariana stood by the window in her room, staring up at the stars. She no longer felt the weight of doubt or fear that had once held her back. Now when she looked at the sky, it felt like home. She was no longer just a girl with dreams. She was a young woman, ready to take on the universe. And as the night stretched on, Mariana made a vow to herself. No matter where her path took her, no matter how many obstacles lay ahead, she would always remember the most important lesson she had learned, the one her mother had instilled in her from the very beginning. Never let anyone define what you can or cannot do. Only you have the power to shape your destiny. With that thought, she closed her eyes, a sense of peace washing over her. The future was hers to create, and the stars were waiting.